Hey traders and investors, checking in on the psychedelic and cannabis spaces. We had some headlines this week, some volatility, some volume, and we'll see where we stand bigger picture. So last weekend we started out with the psychedelic sector at the forefront because they were showing us clear relative strength comparative to the cannabis sector. Some of the headlines, we had some psychedelic measures added to the must-pass defense bill for research and development. So that's a positive. You've got the Netflix documentary, How to Change Your Mind, coming out. That was entertaining. I'm only 3/4 of the way through it, but nothing new there if you've been following along in the space, but hopefully it's reaching a lot of people that are new to the space. And again, it's just part of that shift. It has nothing to do with the stocks. It has to do with the shift that we are looking to take place and that I am a full big believer will be taking place over the next decade with the psychedelic space and its uses in medicine and acceptance and research. So that's all exciting. And now let's look at the charts. And again, for me personally, I am detaching myself from the news as much as possible because in these sectors, the news generally has gotten people into trouble and the technicals have been much more clear, at least for me personally as a full-time trader. So CMPS, tons of volatility. And we started this week very strong after the big breakout last week, but we gave a ton of that back. That pullback there that took about 2.5 days is 24% downside. So tons of volatility. And because of the size of that pullback, I would be anticipating that we're going to form a daily lower high as the most likely result of this next bounce. So anything under 1390 is a daily lower high. And if the bears are going to take back momentum, we would have to see a confirmed daily downtrend, which would look like inability to break resistance and then drop down and break support. 1061 is now our new daily higher low. And we've been forming these daily higher lows ever since the bottom in a big 100% plus bull move. But these are all little higher lows on the way up. And we're just watching for clues that we're going to potentially lose that daily uptrend. So keeping an eye out for, and we're not seeing as much correlation. You know, I can look at all the US MJ names right now and all the Canadian MJ names. They're very, very similar to each other. But as far as some of the major psychedelic names, we have MNMD looking a lot different than CMPS. So treating them individually, but it would be notable to me if we did confirm a daily downtrend, I would be utilizing that sentiment for the rest of the sector. I personally am not trading this sector very actively right now. I am interested in the potential of a swing trade on ATAI because it's a daily bull flag. And there's buying from ARC going on. They bought at least another maybe 300,000 shares this past week. So key support here is 398. And if I am going to establish a trade game plan, that's the level that I'm going off of. Ooh, nice, right on cue. So this is just, Fidelity's been putting these out, where Fidelity's keeping an eye on these little alerts for these psychedelic names. Anyways, no news. So if I'm establishing a trade game plan, it's based off of that level. And I did miss the trade today. I was too distracted shorting TLRY, which we'll look at in just a minute. But I know some other people, some other Chart Guys members were on top of this where we had this triple bottom the last 3 days, 406, 407, 406. So that was a nice level to be playing off of. 398 matters more to me. But again, I like a setup where I have a nice clear level nearby where if that level holds, the daily uptrend will remain intact and we will see continuation. And if that level breaks, then we lose the daily uptrend and I stop out. So the risk and reward is nice and clearly defined if I have a stop loss level that is nearby. So bulls would have to break 433 and 438 for continuation of this move. And then from there, 446 is the highest level we've seen in the last all of May, June, 2.5 months. So if we lose the daily uptrend on this name, we will zoom out knowing that we have to confirm a weekly uptrend for notable follow through. We've been in a weekly downtrend for a very long time. This bounce is nice for the bulls, absolutely. Significant move off of the lows, essentially 40-some percent, 45%. But we can see on the weekly time frame, we hit a low of 305, a bounce to a lower high of 446, and then a lower low of 295. Granted, that lower low did not get much follow through. But if we do not break 446, it is still just a weekly lower high. So what the bulls need to do is confirm the trend change. Once we lose the daily uptrend, we scout a weekly high or low compared to 295, and then we have to change the weekly trend. Then we zoom out. Then we have to change the monthly trend. We look for just a lower high on the monthly, and then we need the monthly trend change. So we know it's one time frame at a time. If you're going from a downtrend on every single time frame to try and change it to an uptrend on all those time frames, it takes a very long time to shift that momentum and to see those trend changes play out. For us to get in a monthly uptrend, we would have to bounce for multiple months, pull back for a month or two, and then see continuation. I mean, we're talking a process that's going to take at least 6 months or so. So it's a very long, slow road, but certainly a very nice bounce that is creating some space for the potential of a weekly trend change back to the bulls. As I've said many times in these videos, it's the broader stock market that is having a major impact on things. And yes, these headlines definitely have a short-term impact, as we'll see on these charts, and the volume spikes and causing some shorts to cover. But if we look at the NASDAQ, it's in a tightening daily range, and this tightening daily range has been forming for the last month or so. And how this breaks is going to absolutely have a significant impact on the short-term direction. If we reject from resistance and break support because of bearish earnings, we've got tech sector earnings coming up. We got the FOMC a week from this coming Wednesday. We certainly closed the week strong as far as today is concerned. But if we were to see a bear break here, obviously it's going to be continued downward pressure on these two sectors. And if we see the bull break, in my opinion, we're going to start to see some risk on mindset, which could be beneficial for some bounce follow through. ETH, crypto name, not related, but very similar pattern. And just an hour ago, it broke this double top, no follow through, but it did break that resistance level to get to the highest price in a month. So again, just viewing it as a grouping of risk on assets and seeing if the shift is able to take place, which does remain to be seen. One other thing to mention, talking about looking back at other things and saying, well, these names went X, Y, and Z% off of the COVID lows. Shouldn't have said that word. YouTube doesn't like when I say that. But one thing to realize that's very different before we get back to the analysis here is this run right here, and this is just GTBIF as an example. So this run right here is very different. You look at this and say, well, that's an 1100% move. But once we look at the lack of overhead resistance, how many bag holders are back here? Not a lot of them. And as soon as you clear 25, there's literally nobody that is in the red. And so you have a lot more follow through because there's not this overhead supply of shares. This time around, it is very different. It would take a lot more dollar volume to see those percentage gains, because every single dollar that you go up, there is a new group of bag holders that are underwater. And think of how many people in this sector would love to get back to break even after looking at a red position for 8 months, 10 months, however long it's been. And to get back to break even, there's going to be a lot of overhead supply of shares. So just be aware that yes, reversals can take place. Yes, they can be fast. If there's a news catalyst, there can be a lot of momentum behind them, but there's a ton of overhead resistance of shares from this drop that we have seen. And we have not seen anything like this ever in these names as far as the amount of overhead resistance that there is. And it goes for Canada as well, certainly even more so on some of these Canadian MJ names. So back to psychedelic sector, we looked at ATAI and CMPS, MNMD. This is the weakest of the group because it's still in a daily downtrend. We had a resistance level at 73 cents, fresh lows, double top at 73 cents, higher low. So this is a must hold 625 level, and we got to break 73 to confirm the daily trend change. If we do not break 73, we're not going anywhere. If we break 73, we zoom out, and anything under 105 is just a weekly lower high. Every single bounce that we've seen in this name since June of 2021, 1 year ago, has been a weekly lower high. So when I see that, I say, okay, if the character of this chart is going to change, we have to break the weekly lower highs. And if that does not happen, nothing is changing. And that helps me from getting overly excited. So as far as these names are concerned, dollar volume, we can see the 20-day average dollar volume for MNMD. That's what this orange line is down here. and I'm looking at about 4 million. So we're talking under $3 million a day traded. That's not a lot of volume at all. CMPS, we're looking at under $4 million a day. ATAI, we are looking at under $4 million a day. So for me, that's peanuts. And for me, when MSO started trading, MSOS, for me, it was a $5 million mark. Start putting up more than $5 million a day, I'll pay attention to that volume. And so the fact that all these names are under $5 million tells me it's still very low volume, which, is something to pay attention to, because if there is hype and if there is momentum and if shorts are forced to cover, that's when you start to see that volume ramping up. And we need to see $10 million days on average for that momentum to get going. And again, just the comparison for MSOS going back historically, when we first started trading here, look at this volume. It was non-existent. I was not paying attention to this ETF at all when we were putting in 25,000 shares a day. We were trading $800,000 a day for a very long period of time. When did that change? Right about here. And then you can see the volume just ramps up the whole way up. So keep an eye out for volume if things are going to change. So that's the psychedelic names. Those are the ones that I pay attention to because they are higher listed on the NASDAQ. Yes, there's a bunch of penny stocks as well. But again, I need dollar volume as a trader, and those penny stocks don't have it. So now on to cannabis. And we had a spike this week where we have the SAFE Act getting passed for the 487th time. And we had the Senate is going to be looking towards a decriminalization bill. And so those headlines cause shorts to cover. So why do they cause shorts to cover? Because when that headline flashes, number one, the precedent here, we have an extremely bearish sector where the bears have had it on easy street for many, many months. Nothing to worry about, full control, tons of shorts. So there's a lot of people on one side of the boat. If you got the bull side and the bear side, there's a lot of people on one side. And eventually you can have too many people on one side of a trade and the boat flips. So in this instance, you have the bots and the algos reading that headline instantly and instantly covering shorts and buying long. Then you have the active traders like myself and everybody in our chat room that is then getting that headline 1 minute later. And then we're acting on it and, market buying into that momentum. And so that causes a short-term frenzy of buying at the ask. And anybody that wants to cover their shorts, they are forced to buy at the ask as well. So there's a period of time where literally all you have is people buying at the ask. And so that's why we get these runaway double-digit % moves so quickly, because there are so many shorts, and it triggers people's stop losses. And just an example, TLRY, we broke resistance of 362. We broke resistance of 372. As soon as 372 breaks, anybody that has shorted this name in the last 5 weeks is now red. So that's part of that catalyst, that's the word I'm looking for. Don't know. Chain reaction. So the chain reaction to just shoot straight up for 25 minutes. So I was away from the computer when that happened, so I was not able to benefit from it. I did trade. The way that I treat things, again, if I'm swing trading, I'm looking towards the US side of things. And if I'm day trading, it's Canada because of the dollar volume. And, TLRY is putting up $200 million on Thursday, more than that in dollar volume. And the big day for MSOS on Thursday was something like 40 million, and CGC was 50 million. So it's multiple times more dollar volume than any other name in the sector. And it's clearly the name that big money and the professional traders are using as a vehicle for these moves. So I did trade it a little bit on Thursday, got a little bit of that move right there, but nothing notable, just a little half day maker. But I did short it today. So today was on a silver platter presented to bears. So why was that? Because we had clear resistance levels in play from the previous day, and some names broke those resistances, but a name like TLRY did not. So it's a simple statement. If we do not break 381, bulls are not going anywhere, and we're going to see profit taking. So what shifted for me to be looking short was watching pre-market. So pre-market, normally we see Canadian MJ names trading with what the broader market is doing. And if you look at SPY and the S&P 500 here, pre-market, look at this move from 8:30, and this was a reaction to some data pre-market, but we had 8:30 to the open, 9:30, literally all bulls, and a move up of over 1%. And during that point in time, I'm watching TLRY. And TLRY from 8:30 to 9:30 the open doesn't budge. So that tells me scout a short. Because if we're not going to benefit from the broader market going up, what happens if the bell rings and we pull back at all in the broader market? It's going to help the price go down. Absolutely. So entered a short first thing. And I do have a swing trade in MSOS, which was another reason, because I hedge. I like to hedge my exposure. Because if I'm in a swing trade of MSOS, I know there's going to be periods of consolidation where we pull back 5% that I'm going to have to sit through. I don't like when my positions drop 5%, but I know that if I'm going to try and let a longer term move play out, I mean, the only reason that I'm in a position right now that's up 10% is because I sat through multiple periods of consolidation. So I hedge, and I did that by shorting TLRY. So I say, okay, well, if the sector is going to pull back once the bell rings, my MSOS is going to drop, my portfolio total is going to drop, but if I'm short TLRY and it drops, I can offset that drop in my account. If the sector bulls show up on the morning, I will stop out of my short with a small loss, and my long exposure will likely continue to benefit. So I was watching the first, we'll go down to the 15-second chart here because this is how quickly I was reacting to what I was seeing in the price action. And it was an initial weak start, and then we bounced real quick. And what I was watching was 71, because we hit 71 and pulled back to 68, and then we hit 71 and couldn't get over it. So I'm looking at that and saying, if we can't get over 71, I'm shorting. We cleared 71 by 1 penny and then pulled right back under 70. As soon as we go right back under 70, I short. And so I was just sitting there with my order filled out, my market order filled out, and all I got to do is press the button. So I was filled at 369 short, which was a great short. And in the end, I scaled out way too early. My initial scale out, I have no problem with where I did it because that's my style of trading. I enter larger position sizes. I scale out partial very quickly to go into risk-free trades. So as soon as I sell half at 364, we'll call it, my break even on this trade is now 374, which means I can put my stop at 374 and I have zero risk. I cannot lose on this trade at all. And so that's it. I don't have to do anything. I set my stop and I watch it play out. And then from there, bears followed through. And at that point, the magnitude of the drop that we saw, the fact that 5-minute RSI was crushed, I am anticipating an hourly higher low is the most likely scenario because of the size of the move yesterday. I see 5-minute oversold and I see a day maker for me. And I have a day maker on the table where if I sell, my day is made as far as what my goal is on the day for a trade, literally in the first 5 minutes of trading. So I sold the second half at 350 and locked it in. Quick little 4% trade. And we pulled back a lot further than that. So I can look at that and say, oh man, if I held longer, I could have had more gains. But in the end, it definitely pulled back a lot more than I would have anticipated it to. I was tempted to play a 5-minute oversold bounce, and I did make one small attempt, ended up giving back about 25% of my short profit, and then I was just done with TLRY from the day. So that is how I traded things. And again, I was anticipating an hourly higher low on TLRY, and it just never came. And I was expecting weakness, and it was way weaker than I was even anticipating. So this goes for the sector now. Completely erased that move. So this shows us that the move yesterday was mostly shorts covering, and then the move today, shorts jumping right back in. And bears have been trained to short pops in this sector for years, for over a year and a half. They've been trained that works, and they're going to keep doing it until it doesn't work. And the only way it's going to stop working is if we get a move that lasts multiple days, forms a higher low, shorts are going to jump in and be piling into that daily consolidation. We then need the higher high that puts them underwater and forces them to cover even more. And essentially, we just have to change trends on all these time frames to put constant pressure on the shorts. Because if you see fast, hard moves that are then the top, Just like that move first thing. If I have that short and I sell partial and I set my stop, I literally don't have to worry about anything. And there are bears that are doing that on the daily time frame from a swing perspective. So if their levels aren't getting hit, and if they're not stopping out, they're just going to keep doing it. So we gave it all back. The sector is still extremely weak. The sector is not positioned well. I'm talking about Canada right now, is not positioned well at all for any broader market weakness. So now we have a new level. If we do not get over 381 on TLRY, we are not going anywhere, and bears remain in complete control of the daily chart. Cron was one of the other stronger names because we do have a daily uptrend here. Higher low, higher high, higher low, lower high. We broke the high of yesterday, but we failed resistance at 327. And so if we drop down now and lose this daily support of 284, that's then confirming a daily downtrend. And that's bears taking right back over. And that's our weekly lower high being set. Anything under 361 is a weekly lower high in this prolonged downtrend that just keeps setting lower highs every bounce. So we're watching that short-term support level very closely, 284. CGC has absolutely fallen apart. Dilution news converting convertible debt into shares. From that news, I was astounded at how much bear follow through we saw. Not just on that day. On that day, we dropped 17%, but to then form a lower high every single day for the next 8 days after a 17% drop, this stock is in so much trouble as far as, what's it going to take? You go 200% and you're back to people that are in the red from 3 months ago. This name, I bought this name for a friend's baby when it was born, probably in the teens, and I'm not going to be the favorite uncle because I have no hope that this name is going to turn things around. Back then, whenever that was, I had some hope, but man, this is brutal. This puts cryptocurrency to shame. I've sat through crypto pullbacks where the entire market drops 85% over the span of a year and a half. CGC is down 96%. I don't think we're ever going to see all-time highs again. 2,500%. I would be shocked if we did. So we got a new resistance level, 249. It's a potential daily bear flag. If we do not break 249, we're not going anywhere. Even if we do break 249, we have to confirm a daily trend change for anything to shift. Support is down at 213 and 2 psychological, and it is a bleak looking chart. There's only one way to call it. And I put out a dilution video. If you have not seen it, go to, just Google TheChartGuys dilution. And I talk about ACB a bit as an example in this video. That's not me. This is Brave. You got to go to Google. TheChartGuys dilution. I suggest watching this video because it's going to give some insight as to why ACB is falling apart. And potentially, I haven't read the financials on CGC ever, if not in a very long time. So I can't say with any kind of certainty if they're in a death spiral. But with what the chart looks like and the fact that it was dilution news as a catalyst to kick off this extremely big drop, got to be cautious of that kind of financing when a company gets in a lot of trouble and their only way to try and stay afloat is just diluting. Endless overhead supply of shares. Essentially, you look at the USMJ space and I talk about the overhead supply of shares. Dilution is essentially an artificial overhead supply of shares because it's just being created out of thin air. So ACB, same deal, absolutely crushed. We're never going back to all-time highs, ever, ever, ever. Probably more reverse splits to come, but there's lessons here. So this happened to me in penny stocks, right? My penny stock back 10 years ago, 12 years ago when I was trading, my penny stock went up 700%. And I then held it down, gave it all back. And so I've never seen it on higher listed exchanges starting from as significant a market cap as we saw, but it is the exact same thing. And so I know a lot of you learned some painful lessons. So did I. Fortunately for me, it was It was big money back then. I mean, it was 7,000 to 42,000 back to 7,000. And when you're 22 years old, that is a lot of money. But if you never make that, I've never made that mistake again. In a decade since then, I have never made that mistake again. And I have made it all back and a lot more. So if you learn from the mistakes and you grow from that, it can be spun into a positive. But ACB is all bears. Resistance now of 149, then 161. And trying to build a base of support down in the 120s. But again, if we bounce on the weekly, we're just looking for a weekly lower high with tons of space for it to form. And the sharks are circling, saying, give me a bounce so I can short, and just hoping this dilution death spiral continues. VFF did confirm a little daily uptrend with that bull move yesterday. Gave most of it back today. Still not game over, but if we break 272, we lose all progress on this bounce and look back towards that low. And again, it's just building, bulls are playing defense the last 5 weeks on some of these names, but we just haven't seen anything in terms of offense aside from that quick headline spike, which again, we gave it all back, at least in Canada. USMJ held on to those gains a bit better, but still very skeptical, right? I'm in bullish positions and I am extremely skeptical of the bulls. A lot of people who are not professional traders, will be in bullish positions and they'll be on social media looking for every piece of information that they can to give them confirmation bias. I am looking for every piece of information that I can to tell me to get out of that position. I'm extremely skeptical. I'll give the bulls a chance because my technical setups were enough and it was a low risk, decent reward entry that was enough to get me into it, but extremely skeptical. And that shows a lack of emotional attachment, which again, if you're going to play this game, you have to have that lack of emotional attachment. IIPR headlines, so one of their big revenue streams defaulting, and of course, anything that's bullish with MS or safe banking is potentially bearish for their business model. So a little bit of a double whammy and big gap down and close near the low. So that's a 15-20% drop. And the darling of this sector up at all-time highs, benefiting from the broader market strength. It's really the only cannabis name that was benefiting from the broader market strength the second half of 2021. And it is now getting smashed down almost 60%. And it is joining, very quickly joining, in absolute despair here. Every single bounce is just a lower high. Keep it simple. If that keeps happening, the character of the chart is not changing. Lower high, lower high. Next time we bounce, we're going to set a lower high, anything under 118. This was a really nice top fish. Obviously, in hindsight, darn, coulda, woulda, shoulda. You shorted at 136. You put a stop at 140. You're risking $4. The reward is $40. 10 reward for 1 risk. So bears in absolute control. Hourly downtrend, daily downtrend, weekly, monthly downtrend. Little monthly bear flag here. There's a head and shoulders. MSOS. So MSOS now has some cash to work with. I think they got double-digit millions. So that's nice. We have a daily uptrend. That's nice. This is the first daily uptrend with a higher low and higher high that we've seen. Back here, we had a little double bottom and resistance break with no fall. It's actually very, very similar to May right now. Same thing, little bounce, held support, broke resistance, no follow through. So next week's very important because if this bull break sees no follow through, it's here we go again. Nothing's changing. So bull move. Again, my position at this point, I've done a little bit of flipping of that position and I had an average of in the 1030s. My initial entry was in the 1050s, but sold a little bit, rebought it lower. And I sold half of that position today in the 1130s. Reason being, the sector looks extremely weak, and I don't want to give back the nice 10% gains over the last couple of weeks. So I may or may not reload. I have no idea, honestly, at this point. I know that we're just looking for a weekly lower high on any kind of bounce. I know that that bull move was very short-lived. Essentially, it's the broader market. If the broader stock market breaks that sideways range bullish, then I will likely jump back in that half position. And again, I'll just be risking profit. I'm not going to lose on this trade. Worst case scenario, I'll stop out break even wherever that ends up being. Ideally, I want to get in a spot where 1054 is my average is under that level. So if that base of support, which is our higher low, if that is lost, I then stop out. 30 minutes, we got to wrap this video up. So all in all, double top here as well. Again, you look at the Canadian MJ sector and US MJ is like, oh, thank goodness, it's a good day. In reality, the broader market was really strong today and it didn't help US MJ at all. Hourly is close to confirming a downtrend. If 1122 breaks, hourly downtrend confirms. Then we look for daily pullback with 1054 as a must-hold level. But a lot of people are like me, looking at this headline and saying, yeah, okay, we've seen this 100 times. Who cares? One of these times it'll be for real. But again, I am doing everything based on price action. And I'll read the headlines, and I know that it will give me intraday opportunities, how the reaction is going with that headlines. But as far as, looking out a month and saying, I'm going to try and build a position for when this gets voted on, doesn't even enter my mind as a factor. I am looking towards the votes in November. That is something that I'm watching for, but that's still 4 months away. Individual names, GTBIF, weekly bounces underway. So again, it's a daily uptrend, but trend changes with zero follow through means zoom out and scout a flag. So if this bull move does not get any follow through, it's a weekly bear flag. A weekly bear flag is a weak bounce. Watch our fib retracement video for exactly how to measure and determine probabilities as to whether or not something is a flag or not. Google ChartGuys Fibonacci. But if it's less than a 382 retracement, it's a potential bear flag, and we would need another 50%, less than that, but another 35% to even get to the 382 retracement. So the weekly bear flag is on the table. Bulls have to prove to us that it is not a weekly bear flag by maintaining a daily uptrend and following through. The big red flag is if this daily high or low is lost. For MSOS, it's 1054. For GTBIF, it's 875. I've got a tickle in my throat. VRNOF, daily uptrend. Again, must hold 570. This is progress, right? We've seen some progress, more progress for the bulls than we have at any point in the last 6 weeks. If you lose that daily high or low, the progress is out the window. We zoom out. Anything under 859 is just a weekly lower high. CRLBF, big old short squeeze. It's been one of the weakest individual names, so that was definitely some of the fuel behind that move. Given most of it back, must hold 287 or bears take back over. We're just looking for a weekly lower high to be the result of this bounce. TCNF, not even in the daily uptrend. Didn't break 1320 resistance. Daily lower highs continue. There is a base of support at 1095. Bulls played some defense, not doing a thing going on offense. So I would say on this chart, this is one of the weaker names at the moment because we haven't confirmed anything for the bulls. And CURLF, same deal. If we can't get over 543, we're not going anywhere. Bulls played some defense with a base of support. They're not doing anything on offense yet. So in the end, it's definitely a fairly bleak outlook. A lot of what I just said, the vast majority, is bearish, but I am in a bullish position. How does that make any sense? The risk to reward setup for the trade was there. I like playing bounces, but managing risk back to all cash very quickly if this move putters out, and then patient again. There will come a time where this sector goes over 100% easily. We're just not there yet, potentially, most likely. So I'm going to keep positioning myself for the possibility of when that move does take place, but very quickly back to cash, ideally getting in risk-free positions as soon as I can. And I will not fall asleep on these sectors because, again, I've been through enough hype cycles over the last 12 years, most of them in cannabis. I mean, these cannabis penny stocks, all you got to do is go back and look at the OG names, MJNA. This is where I learned the game. Look at these moves. 20, here's a 1,000% move in 2 months. And then you get most of it back. And then you got your 2,000% move. And you get back 85% of it. And then you got thousands of percent. And then you get back 95% of it. So I've played this game. I learned the hard way. I took my licks and bruises back when I was playing with smaller capital, fortunately. But this is nothing new as far as hype cycles. And again, after you go 1,000% and get back 85% 4 times, the pumps still happen. There was still 1,000 whatever percent pump. So psychedelics will pump, cannabis will pump. My trading style is absolutely not dollar cost averaging in, absolutely not scaling in without a stop loss, mitigating my risk, jumping in on hype, volume, and momentum. It will happen. There will be a fundamental catalyst, legally speaking. But until that happens, I'm using small capital and I'm being very cautious. And when it does happen, I will use large capital and be very aggressive. I don't care if I'm buying 50% off the bottom. If I've got bull momentum at my back and I can grab another 50% very confidently with larger capital, I'll skip that first 50%, no problem. I hope you're well. I hope you have a great weekend. Don't forget to do good things. Appreciate you watching and appreciate the likes and subscribes and all that stuff.